So Matt, pleasure to speak with you. Blues Big City Adventure, really fun movie. What was kind of your history with Blues Clues? Because obviously you didn't grow up watching it, but it was such a phenomenon. Like when I was watching the movie, I was shocked at how much I kind of just remembered and knew from like osmosis, like the handy dandy notebook and the pepper shaker talking, like so much of this flooded back into my memories while watching. So what was your kind of knowledge of the franchise?
Yeah, I mean, I was about 10, 11, 12 when Steve came out of the scene, so I was a little old for it, but my little sisters watched it. And so it was like always on in the background in my, childhood kind of a thing. But when Josh came on to be the new host, I remember when they were having all of that, the auditions, for the new host and all the press and the marketing they were doing behind that. I thought that was really cool. And so that's kind of my history with it. Like Nickelodeon hit me up and told me they wanted a musical, and I was kind of in it musical. I was like, I'm game, let's do it. And so I then dove in and did like all the research, and the team that we worked with really helped kind of construct the sets and hide all of these millions of Easter eggs in the movie for all the OG fans. So it was fun to like see all of the millions of characters that they created in the Blue's Clues world and kind of like integrate them into the film, into New York City.
Yeah, and it being in New York City, and having those three generations of Blue's Clues hosts, it's kind of made people think a lot about Spider-Man No Way Home. There's been so many
Yeah,
fun memes.
yeah.
How has it been seeing them compared to one of the biggest blockbusters, and seeing like the fans are really excited for this crossover with all three hosts appearing?
Yeah, it was crazy to see that, and it like originally I was like, what? And I was like, oh yeah, because I remember seeing No Way Home, and I was like, when that moment happened in the dining room, and you got all the Spider-Man in there, is just people were throwing popcorn in the air and screaming, and it's funny to think like all the kids that were Steve Blue's Clues kids then are now Marvel kids, and so like that parallel just makes so much sense, and it's kind of it's justifiable because we want people to see the film, and when Joe comes on screen and Steve comes on screen, to just like scream and see them all come together, and it just be like this like mind-blowing experience. And so it really adds to the excitement. And yeah, I love the parallel. Some of the memes are so funny. So,
Yeah, it's real great. You mentioned about, putting in a ton of Easter eggs, and it's cool because this is a film that celebrates, the Blues Clues legacy. It's celebrating Broadway and music. How cool was it, specifically being in New York City to, celebrate music, since you have, you work so much in music videos coming up. So how cool was it to kind of have that connective tissue?
yeah, it was really important actually. We were definitely using On the Town, with Frank Sinatra and Gene Kelly as a big reference for the movie. We were using Funny Face, as a musical that takes place in the city of Paris. We were using a lot of the old MGM musicals, a lot of Fred Astaire stuff, as references. So we were taking a lot from the old and putting it into the contemporary. So being able to create updated versions of classical musical numbers with people in colorful outfits singing and dancing in the streets and running around New York and hitting all these iconic locations, it really felt great. And it was great that Nickelodeon gave us the creative freedom to make a musical that obviously is updated and has a lot of elements of different genres of music, but still has its heart and soul, from that Broadway slash old MGM musical style.
Yeah, and you got some like amazing people with connections to Broadway, obviously BD, and then you had that great singer, and then you had Taboo from the Black Eyed Peas. How did
Yeah.
like some of these cameos come together?
Our incredible casting department, like they just really went above and beyond and tried to find us tons of cameos that were either relevant to, giving Josh advice, being sort of wise sage characters, or connected to Broadway, whether it's Ali Stroker or Philippa Sue, obviously from Hamilton. And the other thing too is that we used as a reference for this film, because I wanted it to be a full sort of like bridge, like a family movie, that adults can watch with their kids. We used Muppet Movie, as a really big reference for that. I think the original Muppet movies, as well as the new one, did a really good job at taking a kid's property and putting in like cameos of actors that adults would notice, so that was like a really fun thing to do and sort of fill them in throughout the entire movie.
Yeah, yeah. Speaking about like a more adult oriented cameo, I was curious about Alex Winter. That whole scene where him and Steve are kind of saying the same stuff. Was that a reference to the Robot Chicken sketch he did where he voiced Steve, or what was that about?
That just happens to be a coincidence, actually. The fact that he voiced Steve in that Robot Chicken episode. I was just like, I learned about that episode after we shot the movie. I didn't even know about it beforehand. So that just happens to be a coincidence. But like him being in there like was huge for me, because obviously I'm diehard like Bill and Ted and like a huge Lost Boys fan. As well as like Alex now is a big documentary filmmaker. So he's just like an incredible filmmaker, artist through and through. And he played it was so fun to have that character, as well as like putting him in that scene that has that like Wayne's World, obvious homage to it. It was kind of like this full circle moment with like old characters, new characters, rocking out to the Blues Clues song in a Wayne's World style. Like it was just pure fun.
Super awesome. And some of the humor that I really liked was just seeing Josh, in the real world, away from like the Blues Clues magic, like him acting shocked when people are like just interacting with normal like inanimate objects, and him expecting it to be alive, and then
Yeah.
there's some twists later on. But like I just thought that was so funny. How was it just having fun with just kind of the ridiculous and like an imaginative world of Blues Clues and taking it out of that?
Yeah, that was super fun. It was actually, I remember we had the script all written out and we started shooting on the first day. And the very first take is actually the take where Josh is walking towards the jazz club to meet Ali Stroker. And he's walking in the street, and it's not in the script, but he was just, all of our extras walking by, he was just like, hi, how you doing? Just like being like really like delightful, and just like overly optimistic to them. And these are just New Yorkers walking the street. And we realized, Angela and Tracy and I, Angela who wrote the script and Angela and Tracy created Blues Clues. We're like, there's so many parallels to Elf, with Will Ferrell going to New York City and being like this innocent, guy that doesn't really know, that people can be cynical and people can, be like, hey, I'm walking here, like that whole thing. And so we then played more and more into that idea of Josh being this innocent guy from Storybook World in a city like New York, which is obviously a warm and magical place, but it can be bitter at times. And we really played into that to bring out some of that humor that I think adults and kids alike will both like.
What were the challenges, especially early on, because it starts in the classic like Blues Clues house, and he's filming these scenes with a bunch of CGI objects and stuff that's not there. I know in the past in some of your music videos, like America's Sweethearts by Fall Out Boys, that was kind of similar with the the backgrounds being added on. So how was it just having that interactions between the live action and then what I assume is just like mostly blue screen and changing that?
Yeah, that was when we were on green screen. I was very much in my comfort zone, because yeah, the Fall Out Boy video, we pretty much it was all blue screen with a giant carousel on set. And so we're able to do like a live action animation hybrid with that one. And so the first 10-12 minutes of the movie were all on green screen, and then going out into actual New York City, that was a huge challenge, because we needed to make sure when Josh and the other actors are interacting with the animated characters that their eye lines are correct. So you have to use these spherical balls to sort of place in, and we had like different puppets and dolls that we would place so the actors could rehearse and get their eye lines correct and how they're going to interact with the characters, as well as you had to have a VFX camera capture the lighting of the scenario so then they could rebuild that lighting onto the animated characters post production. So it looks like Blue is really in New York City. So you kind of had to do more rehearsals because they were animated characters, and you had to take extra time for the VFX to capture all their lighting. So it was almost like shooting a film with extended time to do all the VFX and the rehearsals. So it made it a little tougher, but it was a fun challenge and it was a good learning experience too.
Yeah, I was also curious how you kind of got your start in music videos, because you worked with so much like pop punk royalty right off the start. Fall Out Boy, Paramore, Newfound Glory, like these are amazing bands.
Yeah, yeah. So I started I mean, I just grew up in the punk rock scene in Detroit. So when I started going to high school, we went to a high school Cousino in Warren, Michigan that actually had a TV station, and we were able to borrow cameras there. And we would just start shooting punk rock bands in Detroit, my friends and I, and just learning how to shoot a live performance. And then, I built my music video career from there. And a lot of the pop punk connections are because I had a lot of friends in pop punk bands, actually, and punk rock bands, and that's sort of how, like through friends I met Newfound Glory, and through I did a video for Anthony Green, and I remember the reason I got the Fall Out Boy video is because Pete Wentz saw the Anthony Green video I did. He's like, I want something trippy and animated like that, so that's how I got America's Sweethearts. And I always wanted to work with Alkaline Trio, and I was able to do a video for them. So I sort of, just took my sort of punk rock roots. And when I was doing music videos, obviously I did a lot of R&B and pop and things like that, but it was definitely a pleasure to be able to do a lot of these bands that I grew up with, do videos for them when I was, on the younger side.
Oh, that's so cool. How was it working with Skiba? I'm a big Alkaline fan.
Oh yeah, it was really fun. We shot their video on top of a mountain in the middle of like like the the hills of the Angeles National, mountains, and it was a really chaotic, set, and it was different because a lot of Alkaline Trio stuff is, dark and moody, and we did a super colorful, different kind of film. It was very artistic film, so it was super fun working with them. I love all their albums. I love their early stuff, obviously, but yeah, they're a great band for sure.
That's cool. I just saw them. I saw Paramore as well when we were young, and AFI
Uh,
was there as well. And you did
yeah,
that
yeah,
awesome video for 17 Crimes.
yeah.
Davey, like what a guy. How was it working with him? Because he seems like he just exudes cool, you know?
Yeah, yeah. Davey's actually a really good friend of mine now. I met him through an old roommate of mine, and so that's how I came to make that video. And he's a true artist. He really, you know took AFI, and every album they come out with, it always evolves. Which is a beautiful thing. You never want a band to stay the same. I mean, as much as I love Black Sails and Shut Your Mouth, to see the progression of AFI and to see their style change throughout the years. It's such an interesting thing to see and such an exciting thing to see because I love every album they put out. And Davey is just so well versed in music and film. He's always pulling great references for his art from really good places. Him and I go to the New Beverly Cinema all the time and just watch old black and white movies together. Whatever old horror movies are playing, like we'll be there. Whatever throwback 90s, 80s movies are playing, we'll be there. So it's good to have a friend that takes their influences from older places, and freshens them up for the contemporary crowd.
Oh, that is so cool that you're just casually watching old movies with Davey. That's awesome.
Yeah.
And then my last question for you, music videos are often shot, on a budget. What has been the biggest lessons you learned from that really made you, because budgets and constraints, that really breeds creativity and working around, figuring out different methods to get your vision done within the constraints. So what has been like the biggest lessons that you've learned from that have helped you with movies and larger products?
Yeah, I would say I don't think we could have made this movie, the blues movie, without my history of being in music video world, because it's boot camp. You are given a small amount of money and you're given 1 day to do it, because most of the time the artists will come into LA, they'll have a show in LA, they'll be on tour, they'll do some press, they'll shoot their video, and then they're out of town. They're playing either San Diego or San Francisco the next day. So, it's a very high stress situation where your resources are limited. And going into the world of feature filmmaking, I realized there's so many moments like that where you have to cut things at the last minute, where you have to lose set pieces, where you have to change the choreography, where you can't get that big beautiful set you wanted, and you have to find a practical location to shoot something at, or where it starts raining and you have to shoot indoors instead of outdoors. You have to make those last minute decisions. And I think being in that sort of cutthroat world of music videos where it's highly competitive and the budgets are low and the time you have to shoot is very minimal, it trained me perfectly for the world of features. And I felt very comfortable making this movie because we had a little more money than the music videos and we had a little more time. And obviously shooting in New York City was a huge challenge, but we were able to adjust when we needed to pull it off.